Are you more in the camp that it's going to be the case that you might need to tokenize everything to basically use all the block space and blobs and everything else that's been built? Or can it be sufficient if it's just Wall Street coming on chain?
No, I mean, we'll tokenize everything, but that's tokenize everything sounds a bit strange, but the meaning of it is that you'll activate digital access to all the assets in the world. Does it mean that everything has to become like hyper-financialized and tradable? Not necessarily, but you want to activate it. It's like whatever people want to trade for whatever reason. People tend to like to trade a lot of things. It's something that I'm very excited will be happening in the future.
All right, we're here with the co-executive director of the Ethereum Foundation, Tomasz. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an exciting time, and I was reflecting, it's almost been a full year for you in your role here too. Almost, we'll call it the full calendar year.
7-8 months.
Yeah,
I started in April.
We'll round up. But yeah, how has the year kind of been for you? What's it been like?
Busy, but also I think that's extremely friendly compared to what I expected. Somehow I imagined that the role at the foundation that would be under constant attack and there would be like just all the unpleasantries, and it didn't happen. So that was great to see. Lots of small minor changes, but usually executed by fantastic team people at the foundation.
Yeah.
So maybe we're just waiting for some kind of signal that, okay, management leadership is sorted and we can continue doing the greatest job possible. And I just use the time to talk to everyone, to go to podcasts, to speak to media, to be a bit more active on Twitter. And I think that external communication is what people were really hoping for. And just taking that function gave much more breathing room for the talent at the foundation to execute.
Yeah, no, I feel like the sentiment generally has been kind of like night and day in terms of how the ETH Foundation has leaned into kind of playing a more active role. I'm curious if there's anything for you reflecting on what has almost been a year, kind of like your proudest moment of kind of being in the role.
I don't think it is anything that I would call like the proudest moment. And also when you say I'm proud all the time of all the work of all of us, but this this is great. Like just feeling that you're part of Ethereum, that's great. But it hasn't changed for me for the last few years. And also like that perception, as you say, night and day. It's very often a bit of like manufacturer perception. No, like that a fabricated thing that someone decided that. Now it's negative, now it's positive. I feel like that's how social media shifts. It's a bit like influenced, manipulated.
Yeah.
Some aspects, sure, and they were maybe simpler to fix than people would imagine that it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I say it from the outside looking in because this year has been a pretty interesting one. You and I were just talking before we started about suits and the idea of like Wall Street getting involved now, the year of the DAT. It's just been, for someone, if you are in Ethereum for a really long time, maybe it isn't all that new. But it does seem like from the outside looking in that like, okay, crypto is having a moment, so therefore ETH is having somewhat of a seat.
True. It looks definitely a foundation for 3 or 4 months after all the changes in the US around regulatory, like Genius, stablecoins, more openness of Wall Street towards crypto. Foundation felt a bit asleep for a while, and what was important was for some people at Ethereum show up at like in DC, in New York, in international financial centers, in Singapore, in Tokyo, and so on, to show up at the events and start talking, answering questions, talk to media, talk about Ethereum and institutional side of Ethereum. And that delay, it's not necessarily that, I'm coming to foundations, that's some specific way of talking to media, but at the same time, Etherealize was happening, and also lots of other people activated. So there's Uniswap, there was Consensus and Jolubin, and the DATs appeared. All of them went to media, and then you feel like everything is happening. But the same way as we continue saying, look, Ethereum Foundation is not central to the decision-making process, to defining everything Ethereum related, the same way we can never claim that we are responsible for all the good that happened this year. It was work of lots of people that spend a lot of time every single day talking about how their vision of Ethereum looks.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think, I don't know if there is a behind the scenes in terms of recruiting kind of the Tom Lees of the world. I know Danny Ryan and the Ethereum team, Vivek, put a lot of time into like marketing it even to where it was on people's radar that Ethereum is this thing that you should own. So clearly a lot of work did go into it. I think I was chatting with Tom at Korea Blockchain Week, and I think it was also interesting to hear, his stated goal of 5%, owning 5% of Ethereum, saying that who knows, maybe we could get to 10. It's like, is there ever, when you're thinking about decentralization, like, is there ever any fears around like centralization risks for some of that, if it is the case?
No, I mean, if it goes beyond 33%, then yes, because that's how the protocol is designed, right?
Yeah.
At 5 or 10 or 15%. Now, the protocol design is that it doesn't matter. On the governance side, also, it's. I've heard people asking this question a lot of times, but I've never heard a single core dev or researcher somehow being worried about it, because I've seen so many examples in the past of like large DeFi protocols, large L2s and so on, not really being considered too much as a threat of somehow affecting governance. Maybe sometimes, okay, like there were questions around Tempo, for example, recently. So you have teams that support Tempo, but then for me, it's normal. Like over time, everyone in the ecosystem will have some conflicts. And those conflicts sometimes are visibly financial, sometimes are relations-based, and so on and so on. But the core development body as a governance body is very resilient for anything that is conflict-related.
Yeah.
So I think that people are very, very cautious, because I think that being a core dev is kind of like you have to have a bit of paranoid approach to things, to security, to centralization, to manipulations. You constantly worry about the capture conflicts, because even as an engineer, you're just designed to look as the weakest links in the entire system. That's how Ethereum core devs work.
Anything that can be exploited easily.
And it's very naturally just flowing into how you treat governance as well.
I mean, I think so. Same thing in the way that we designed Coinage as a community-owned outlet. It was always the same thing. It was like, could someone take this outlet over? Could it be co-opted somehow? And so a lot of thought went into it. And I do agree that there's like a paranoia among everyone in crypto. It's like there's this constant piece of us that is saying, that's maybe why we got into crypto, so the government could take our money at any point. But when it comes to, I guess, we'll get into the technical upgrades too, because it's been a big year for ETH and that. We'll talk about Fusaka in a second. But from like where you sit at differentiating everything that ETH is working on from everything else that happens in crypto, obviously the Solanas of the world, the Swedes, the other projects out there, what do you think is the biggest differentiator that you've tried to instill? And I know it's not just Tomasz doing all this, but like shepherding it. Like, what is that thing that you still say, we can't lose this?
Yeah, no, it's just continuation of the things that people mention as fundamental for the reasons why they choose Ethereum. They mention security, stability, 10 years without stopping. That's we repeat it because we hear it all the time as well. So I think it's important for me not to create something false, that I'll keep talking about Ethereum some way, like hoping that people believe that that's what Ethereum is. No, the approach is go meet everyone and ask them questions about what you're worried about, why you chose Ethereum, what matters. And then when you hear it over and over again, that's like 10 years no downtime, it matters. Security of Ethereum matters. Decentralization matters. It decreases risk, removes counterparty risk, and so on. So the institutions don't want it. Today there was fantastic talk from Danny Ryan about it at DevConnect Argentina. That when you actually look at the cypherpunks and large institutions of Wall Street, for different reasons, but they have the same expectations, like that you have security, decentralization, censorship resistance, open source. It all matters for different reasons, but we meet really with aligned incentives. So these are the things that you can never forgo, because actually the two parts of the ecosystem that are very important. One, because of it drives the values, and says why it's a movement, why it activates people that independently, without anyone else telling them what to do, realize, oh, this is for good, this is for greater good, that's why I participate.
Yeah.
And on the other side, like capital allocators, those that can amplify the effect by integrating Ethereum into financial systems.
Yeah, and also I guess reduces some of those risks as well on the paranoia side of Wall Street. Doesn't want to, as Tom's told us many times, you just don't want to invest in something that could potentially be swayed or someone has a finger on the scale, so to speak. So I mean, it's
they like Ethereum. They feel very comfortable. They also, it's like regulators are familiar with Ethereum. They've seen it for many years, and they were never disappointed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's also a tricky thing for you. Do you ever think about the trade-off between supporting projects that you also, because you're somewhat lending your reputation, not you personally, but the ETH reputation in supporting certain projects versus others? Like, what is it that you think could potentially be a trade-off there around, shepherding the values that you want to see built in the world, whether it's, selfishly, I always think about Coinage in terms of being in the ETH ethos, but there's plenty of other things too. So do you ever look at it as a trade-off between centrally supporting projects versus?
You would see maybe the DeFi treasury policy of the Ethereum Foundation. So it has this DeFi bank rules that says we'll be allocating treasury to DeFi projects, but we'll set the requirements for decentralization, for non-KYC access, permissionless, DeFi, privacy-oriented, and so on and so on. So there's this list of features that really matter, and this is how you start deciding. You understand that there are some trade-offs, but you're moving on that scale. And it's not really black and white, because with multiple properties, very often you have just it's 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. So it matters. The support for the project. So we avoid financing or supporting closer to financing any commercial projects. And Ethereum Foundation is not investing, it's not supporting projects financially. On the public goods side, we may do that. So communities, public goods projects, that's where we allocate money, but even there we prefer the level of support, which just amplify the message. Yeah. And here's the same question, right? So what if we start marketing projects, talking about projects that somehow drift away from the values? I feel also here is a bit some kind of hierarchy of how much we talk about it, how many disclosures we add. I think it's very important when you mention the project, say, look, this is interesting, look at it, this is innovation, this is fun, but privacy suffers, but it's not yet decentralized, and so on. So probably that's what we should always pay attention to.
Yeah, I feel like all that too, as a founder and builder myself, it's all that stuff kind of changes over time too. It's something might start centralized, then eventually become more and more so, and it's always constantly evolving if there are good intentions there. But I guess shifting a little bit over to the idea of where we go from here. I want to get into Fusaka and what's the expectation there, because it's a big upgrade. We've seen historically a lot of enthusiasm goes into those things. What's the most exciting thing for you about this upgrade?
For Fusaka, PeerDAS for sure. So this is Headliner, and Headliner should be the most exciting thing. So we decided we have this process now where for every single fork we choose headliners for the consensus layer, for execution layer. And PeerDAS is Headliner for Fusaka. It should be talked about because it scales layer 2s through scaling the blob numbers. On the side of it, you have multiple smaller EIPs that are related to preparation for scaling, like performance optimizations not really performance optimizations, but repricing of some of the opcodes that either were just not priced well over the last 3, 4, 5 years, or are not very aligned with the fact that ZK technology is coming and has slightly different bottlenecks. So we're preparing for those EIPs, like the good balanced performance of all the opcodes across all the clients, and balanced bottlenecks performance of the prover killers for the ZK VMs. Yeah. So all of this together will continue in Amsterdam and beyond for further scaling of L1s. Then there is some aspects of the UX, so R1 curve, SCP-256 R1, which is a standard for passkeys for many operators, and then you can use passkeys more efficiently at the edge devices, so it should unlock some better logging models.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't even know how technical our audience is, to be exact, but I do think that the most interesting thing here is just how much more efficient Ethereum has become since we started. When we started, it was mints, they were free, but there was still $10 in gas. Now we change our price on things, and it's I don't know, 20 cents, I think, like even on L1. And then using L2s like Base and everything else, it is, I think I'll use the term again, it is night and day when it comes to affordability for some of these things out of the box.
That's
which
true.
I think is really cool.
And it's not even that long time since we achieved that, because I remember last year at Token 2049 in Singapore when we, for the first time, were talking about, oh, we deliver the blobs and now you can use L2s with a fraction of a cent. And that was novel. And people got so quickly used to it and started complaining that the fees are too low. But it was a major achievement, right? So we were heading there for years to get the fees below 1 cent and to get the network to that scale. That's very consistent with the long-term roadmap of L2s, innovating, scaling. I think the problem was and perception of many people that L1 stopped scaling in the meantime. They almost like got so excited about the scaling of L2s that we forgot that L1 should continue just to provide this like very credible scaling commitment for all the L2s that will have to use it for exits, for settlements, for some interoperability.
Yeah.
And then we looked at it and said, well, we can scale it, so let's scale it. It's 3 times maybe this year to the beginning of next year, and then 3 times again, so we'll have 10x improvement over 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is tricky to maintain both those narratives at the same time, because then it's like, all right, which one do we prioritize, the L2s or the L1? And you've got a lot to kind of get out there, but I think,
Why go for why not both?
Why not both at the same time? But I think it is interesting to get your take on this too, because I was chatting with John Poller when we went down to talk to the Crypto Task Force, what was it, last year, maybe this year? And he was, talking about, look, there's enough technical upgrades to where a lot of the stuff that needs to be built on chain can be right now. Sure, it'll get cheaper. But I'm curious to get your take on whether you think it's more of what we've seen so far this year that's exciting in terms of tokenizing Wall Street, and it could be both, or some other use cases that seem novel, like what we're seeing with Zora, what we're trying to do in tokenizing co-ops. Like, are you more in the camp that it's going to be the case that you might need to tokenize everything to basically use all the block space and blobs and everything else that's been built? Or can it be sufficient if it's just Wall Street coming on chain?
No, I mean, we'll tokenize everything, but that's tokenize everything sounds a bit strange, but the meaning of it is that you'll activate digital access to all the assets in the world. Does it mean that everything has to become like hyper-financialized and tradable? Not necessarily, but you want to activate it. It's like whatever people want to trade for whatever reason. And people tend to like to trade a lot of things. Then you have the agentic aspects. So you asked me about where the excitement is. For sure about this adoption for the stablecoins and tokenization. That's great because more people talk about Ethereum and more people start to understand Ethereum and ask questions about decentralization. And probably many institutions suddenly realize, oh wow, those properties are fantastic. We needed it. We just all the time we're looking at it as like, this is crypto, it's bad, we don't touch it.
Yeah.
But we didn't understand it, and now when we understand it, we realize we were looking for it for a long time. The other thing would be anything AI integration with blockchain. I think that the standards, emerging standards for agentic payments, well, we keep repeating it, but also I hear a bit of like questioning around, are we not jumping ahead a bit too much with the agents? Like the agents are still not there, like fully autonomous to trade. But I think we just feel it very strongly that you need the standards because those things will appear and might be explosive in the adoption curve. And it's something that I'm very, very excited will be happening on Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these narratives are somewhat colliding. And I guess it goes back to my earlier question because we saw, I don't know if you looked at the fact that Libra, we're here in Argentina, that Libra wasn't on Ethereum or that Trump's meme coin wasn't on Ethereum. Obviously, hindsight 2020, so no one ever really knows. But like, if that's the case, in terms of like, was there a sense of, interesting, they didn't choose Ethereum for these things? Is there ever like you want to be used everywhere, or is there kind of like a pick and choose situation that goes on here?
Oh no, the protocol neutrality is very important for us, right? So you build protocols so people can express whatever they want to build, and it's not the foundation role to create some kind of moral assessment of what assets are on chain or not. Like I think that society as a whole has many ways of defining, of like assessing whether something is good or bad that you can deploy on chain or on reality. Like it's almost that you would claim about any piece of infrastructure that we use, like whether it's roads or so on. It's like am I building roads? I'm worried that someone is speeding on the roads or so. Like, no, you're leaving that for society to define the rules around it, and it's the same for Ethereum. I want to say that I want to build the system, the network that can have capacity and standards for anything that you want to build on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's the same way too. When you talk about another big theme, it's privacy. And we are in New York. Obviously, we covered the trial of Roman Storm. It's still an ongoing story, to be honest with you. And it's another one where it's like, okay, this is technology that needs to be used. Obviously, the EF and Vitalik as well came out in strong defense of Roman. And I think that's another one. I mean, what do you think is going to be necessary to show the use case of privacy in the way that it should be used? Because I think about what we do too. It's like we are a co-op. We can pay patronage dividends to members. A lot of times co-ops need to store things just because that's the law in the US. And so it's like, to your point, you build it first and then try and show regulators why it's necessary. I think, is that like kind of the right way of implementing what's being built? I
mean, you used here the sentence saying like that, to use the privacy, it should be used. I think there's nothing about how you should use privacy. Like the privacy should be something that is non-negotiable. So like it's just have it. It's not here's your privacy, but you can only use it this way. It's all the other sets of behaviors that you want to set probably as a society restrictions on, but I wouldn't like to relate them to privacy. Like just say, just because there are some fundamental ways of you having freedom, privacy, and so on that allows you to do things. I think it's separate. When we talk about privacy, again, we talk about something fundamental, something both technical and something that we leave that by default has all the aspects of being something valuable and something positive. And then the same way as you define like freedom, ability to express yourself and so on, but by default it's positive, right? Yeah. It's somewhere totally in a different aspect of assessment of this, where you define things as negative or positive for society, like how you use it. It's again, like when we talk about people like Roman, who builds the privacy solutions, we defend that technical engineering ability to deliver the technology that fundamentally is positive. Yeah. And it's required, and we want to deliver, we care about it, and I think there's a value for everyone to use. And we'll defend people who build it because we believe that without it you have much worse society by default again. Like the society without the privacy, it would be like a very strong choice to imagine society totally without privacy. I could think of it, but we agree in general that it's not something that we desire.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a very important piece of I think everything that's built around crypto, and it's also not even like an important piece of only crypto. It's also somewhat important to those who are outside of crypto as well. Yeah. So I feel like it's just kind of one of those stories that we have leaned into telling at Coinage and hope to do more on what happened to Roman in New York. But to kind of wrap up here, Tomasz, and kind of think about you again and what you want to see happen. The year's almost out, so we're going to give you the roundup on this being the first year. As you look ahead to year 2, calendar-wise, what are your big, bold claims, projections? What would be something that you would say, look, this is going to happen. People don't think it's going to happen next year, but it's going to happen. What's your boldest kind of goal to throw out there?
Well, projections, goals would be different things. So projections-wise, I think that I tend to just believe that things will happen faster than they would. So maybe it's never good for me to just say this is what happens next year. I think it will be very natural to expect continuation of scaling and delivery of some things that we started. If we announce them in June and this is still the process that goes through all core devs, research, and so on, then very naturally we should expect continuation of what we started. There were moments last month when I was asking the team members and people in the ecosystem, do you think that we should go this direction, change something, change our major focus areas? After a while, I realized that mostly not. We'll talk about Finality probably more. So this is bold and super exciting for next year. So Barnaby was talking about it on stage today at DevConnect. He was saying, look, we're coming with some Finality solutions that will satisfy majority of the business cases, some business cases, and this will be a a big improvement, and then we can go further and we can shorter the slot times to 6 seconds. So this would be great to see, but it's still in the hands of all core devs to decide. They'll be looking at Fossil, they'll be looking at the shorter slot times, they'll be looking at probably many other proposals that may appear from the community, from the ecosystem, and they'll be voting on what goes. Well, voting again, it's not formalized voting, but they'll be discussing and achieving and getting consensus on what goes in Amsterdam H star next to forks in 26. As for goals, we'll deliver that scaling, 10x scaling. So go to 300 million gas per block that we're going to achieve. Everything that we see on ZK it's moving super fast, and it would be great to see as the blocks are scaling, to also see them real-time proved at that scale, because now we have real-time proving of 45 million gas blocks, but soon we'll be demanding the 60 million blocks to be real-time proved and 100 million blocks to be real-time proved. So the bar is moving for the ZKVMs to deliver. But this will be the goal, for the ZKVMs to be catching up and deliver that real-time proving, and then you can have verification with very lightweight machines.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's clearly a lot, and again, for people who aren't as technical, they might not even realize like kind of the necessity of some of these changes until after the fact, because again, there's not a lot you can do if every single thing that's going to change on chain is $10 to do so or to mint something, but then when you reduce everything, it suddenly opens up a world of possibilities. So I do think it is always interesting to explain that. To go full circle, though, with my last question, now that we've discussed everything, what would you say, and obviously you were in Ethereum for a very long time before you joined the foundation as the role that you're in now, but what's been the biggest thing from the outside versus kind of running things from the inside for you?
I think that I surprisingly never thought too much about how Ethereum Foundation looks inside when I was outside of the foundation. Even as theoretically it would be relevant for us as some kind of partner or other ecosystem participant, I think I was so focused on Nethermind being independent of the foundation that I never thought like, oh, by the way, how does the foundation budget looks? Who are the people inside it? So even my kind of decision point and preparation to join the Ethereum Foundation was not like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about it for a long time. It was more like, yeah, whatever it is, I think I'll be able to work on it because I have that experience now when they reached out. So, and then I started looking, and was it surprising? Not super surprising. Like, so there were some minor things that felt, oh, this is inefficient and easy to solve. Oh, this is different than what I'm used to from Nethermind that I was running before. And these were not the major things like, oh, wow, I would never expect it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got to say, again, as someone who I guess is also technically part of the ETH ecosystem because we built on ETH, appreciate you choosing the time or taking the time and chatting with us, because I know there's a bunch of different places you could go down here, but thank you for giving us time on Coinage.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, and congrats again.
Thank you.